Hello, my name is Yun Nam from CKF. Today I'm gonna read the fairy tales called The Elderbush, written by Anderson. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who had taken cold. He had gone out and got his feet wet, though nobody could imagine how it had happened, for it was quite dry weather. So his mother undressed him, put him to bed, and had the teapot brought in to make him a good cup of elderflower tea. Just at that moment, the merry old man came in who lived up a top of the house all alone, for he had neither wife nor children, but he liked children very much, and knew so many fairy tales that it was quite delightful. "Now drink your tea," said the boy's mother, "then, perhaps, you may hear a fairy tale." "If I had but something new to tell," said the old man. "But how did the child get his feet wet?" "That is the very thing that nobody can make out," said his mother. "Am I to hear a fairy tale?" asked the little boy. "Yes, if you can tell me exactly, for I must know that first, how deep the gutter is in the little street opposite that you pass through in going to school." "Just up to the middle of my boot," said the child, "but then I must go into the deep hole." "Ah, ah, that's where the wet feet came from," said the old man. "I ought now to tell you a story, but I don't know any more." "You can make one in a moment," said the little boy. "My mother says that all you look at can be turned into a fairy tale, and that you can find a story in everything." "Yes, but such tales and stories are good for nothing. The right sort come from themselves. They tap at my forehead and say, 'Here we are.'" "Won't there be a tap soon?" asked the little boy, and his mother laughed, put some elder flowers in the teapot, and poured boiling water upon them. "Do tell me something, pray do." "Yes, if a fairy tale would come of its own accord, but they are proud and haughty, and some come only when they choose." "Stop," said he, all of a sudden. "I have it. Pay attention. There is one in the teapot." And the little boy looked at the teapot. The cover rose more and more, and the elder flowers came forth so fresh and white, and shot up long branches. Out of the spout even did they spread themselves on all sides, and grew larger and larger. It was a splendid elderbush, a whole tree, and it reached into the very bed, and pushed the curtains aside. How it bloomed! And what an odor! In the middle of the bush sat a friendly-looking old woman in a most strange dress. It was quite green, like the leaves of the elder, and was trimmed with large white elder flowers, so that at first one could not tell whether it was a stuff or a natural green and real flowers. "What's that woman's name?" asked the little boy. "The Greeks and Romans," said the old man, "call him a Dryad, but that we do not understand. The people who live in the new booth have a much better name for her. They called her Old Granny, and she it is to whom you are to pay attention. Now listen, and look at the beautiful elderbush. Just such another large blooming elder tree stands near the new booth. It grew there in the corner of a little miserable courtyard, and under its set of an afternoon, in the most splendid sunshine, two old people, an old, old seaman, and his old, old wife. They had great grandchildren, and were soon to celebrate the 5th anniversary of their marriage. but they could not exactly recollect the date. An old granny sat in the tree and looked at as pleased as now. "I know the date," said she, but those below did not hear her, for they were talking about old times. "Yes, can't you remember when we were very little?" said the old seaman, "and ran and played about. It was the very same courtyard where we now are, and we stuck slips in the ground, and made a garden." "I remember it well," said the old woman. "I remember it quite well. We watered the slips, and one of them was an elderbush. It took root, put forth green shoots, and grew up to be the large tree under we old folks are now sitting." "To be sure," said he, "and there in the corner stood a water pail where I used to swim my boats." "True, but first we went to school to learn somewhat, and then we were confirmed." We both cried, but in the afternoon we went up the round tower, and looked down on Copenhagen, and far, far away over the water. Then we went to Fredericksburg, where the king and the queen were sailing about in their splendid barges. But I had a different sort of sailing to that, later, and that too, for many a year, a long way of on great voyages. "Yes, many a time have I wept for your sake," said she. "I thought you were dead and gone, and lying down in the deep waters. Many a night have I got up to see if the wind had not changed, and changed it had, sure enough, but you never came. I remember so well on one day, when the rain was pouring down in torrents, the scavengers were before the house where I was in service, and I had come up with the dust, and remained standing at the door. It was dreadful weather, when just as I was there, the postman came and gave me a letter. It was from you. What a tower that letter had made! I opened it instantly and read. I laughed and wept. I was so happy. In it I read that you were in warm lands where the coffee tree grows. What a blessed land that must be! You related so much, and I saw it all the while the rain was pouring down, and I standing there with the dust box. At the same moment came someone who embraced me. Yes, but you gave him a good box on his ear that made it tingle. But I did not know it was you. You arrived as soon as your letter, and you were so handsome that you still are, and had a long yellow silk handkerchief round your neck, and a brand new hat on. Oh, you were so dashing! Good heavens, what weather it was, and what a state that street was in! And then we married," said he. "Don't you remember? And then we had our first little boy, and then Mary, and Nicholas, and Peter, and Christian. Yes, and how they are all grew up to be honest people, and were beloved by everybody. And their children also have children," said the old sailor. "Yes, those are our grandchildren, full of strength and vigour. It was, methinks, about this season that we had our wedding." "Yes, this day is the 50th anniversary of the marriage," said old Granny, sticking her head between the two old people, who thought it was their neighbour who nodded to them. They looked at each other, and held one another by the hand. Soon after came their children, and their grandchildren, for they knew well enough that it was the day of the 50th anniversary, and had come with their gratulations that very morning. But the old people had forgotten it, although they were able to remember all that had happened many years ago. And the elderbush sent forth a strong odor in the sun that was just about to set, and shone right in the old people's faces. They both looked so rosy cheeked, and the youngest of the grandchildren danced around them and called out quite delighted that there was to be something very splendid that evening. They were all to have hot potatoes, and old Nanny nodded in the bush and shouted "Hurrah!" in the rest.